We're on Daf Gimel, Amud Aleph, and what we're going to see is an entire sequence of issues, of questions that the Gemara vacillates back and forth until it finally concludes Teku. So the word Teku is going to appear, time after time, and what it means is Tekum, which means let it stand. So let's take a look at that section. It's a brand new section. And it begins, if you take a look at Daf Gimel, you'll see wide lines. And if you count down the wide lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the Gemara says, Iboiluhu. A suffix came up in the base medrash. Horu bezdin chelev muter. Bezdin delivered a ruling that you're allowed to eat chelev. Not exactly sure what that means, but probably it means that a certain type of chelev is asur. Not that they deny the whole entity of chelev. Asu mir hakol, and a minority of the kol went ahead and, following suit, ate that chelev, that particular type of chelev. V'chazru bezdin bahem. Bezdin realizes that they made a mistake, and they canceled their decision. Vahoru v'asu miut acher. And somehow Bezdin went back and again made the same mistake. So there was mistake on round number 1, and only part of the congregation violated, based on that ruling, the Iser Chelev. Now, after realizing their mistake and reversing their decision, they again made the same mistake. And now, Asu Miut Acher, a different minority group of the people, violated the Iser Chelev by relying on the second round of their decision. Mao, will there be a chiyuv to bring the carbon helim dover shel tzibur? Because in order to be chayav a carbon, we need that the majority of the people of Israel violate the Iser Kares of Chelev based on the erroneous ruling of the Bezdin. And in fact, that did take place, but there was no integration of the two parts of the community. Each part of the community, each minority group, had violated Chelev for a different ruling. So there are two rulings that are identical in their substance, but they were issued at two different times with a reversal in the middle. Can we integrate the two minorities to form a majority? Mahu, what do we think? Here's the first tzad. Keva d'shtei yediyos ninu lo mitztarfei. The Gemara established that a key, crucial element in the obligation to bring the par helim dover shel tzibur is yediyah. Yediyah means when the people find out that they erred by eating chelev. And here, in this particular case, there are two different yediyos. There's the first minority group that ate the chelev, and they had a yediyah. Now we sort of go back to square one, scratch it all, because Bezdin reversed their decision, but then they repeated their mistake in a second ruling, and now there's a new yediyah for the second group, the second minority. Oh, Dilma, should we say no? Came into idi chelev hu mitztaref. They're both, this minority and that minority, guilty of the same crime by following the erroneous ruling of the court, namely they ate chelev. So the tzirif now, the ability to integrate both minorities, will be generated by the chelev, or again, it doesn't mean the physical object of the chelev, but it means the iser chelev. They both this minority and that minority violated the same Isur Chelev. Now, what bothers me about this Gemara is I don't understand where the time element comes into play. For example, if let's say the Bezdin would make the same mistake in ruling 10 years later, are we going to then again say, well, in both cases, both minorities, the one that ate 10 years ago and the one that's eating today, both have the same violation of Isur Chelev? And what if it's 50 years? And what if it's 100 years? How long of a period of time can you allow the Isur Chelev to sew together different minority groups that violated the Isur B'Shogeg? I don't know. And as I said before, this Gemara that we started now begins an entire series of questions. Here's the second question. Imtim Salomer, if I assume since both minorities violated the same identical Isur Chelev, therefore we could be mitzarif them and take the two minorities, one minority plus another minority equals a majority, and therefore there's a chiyuv of the carbon helim dovish al tzibur, miut b'chelev shal gabi akeva, umiut b'chelev shal gabi adakin, mao. Can we integrate two minorities that violate the same Isur Chelev in a case where there was Chelev of one sort and Chelev of another sort? Right? There are different parts of the innards of the animal, and there's Chelev here and there's Chelev here. For example, there's one Chelev that's al gabi akeva. Right? Keva is the abdomen. And then there's another chelev, which is al gabi dakin, which is the small intestines. Hachavadai kevan de betray kroi ka'asi lo mitztarfe. We derive both the Isur Chelev of the al gabi akeva and the Isur Chelev al gabi adakin from two different psukim. And therefore, shall we consider it as if they're two distinct Isurim, even though they all fit under one generic category of Chelev? Oh, Dilma, should we say Keva the Idi v'Idi Chelev hu mitztarif? I mean, at the end of the day, whether it's Chelev of the Al Gabi Akeva or Chelev Al Gabi Adakin, it's always going to be an Isur Chelev. These are just different forms of Chelev, each of which is derived as a Gili Milsa from a different pasuk, but the pasuk is only revealing to me that this chelev that you find here in this part of the animal is chelev and is included in the same identical Isur of chelev. Now, in order to go through the psukim, we'd have to see the sugya in Chulin on Daf Mem Tes and the psukim in Vayikra Perek Gimel. But we'll just take the Gemara at face value and trust the Gemara that there are two different psukim to teach us two different chelevs of different parts of the animal. Now we're up to number 3. The imtim salam Hashem chelev hu mitztarif, since both chelev al gabi akeva and chelev al gabi adakin are both to be subsumed identically under the same generic category of chelev, it's the same Isur. Therefore, you could be mitzarif the two minority groups that violated this Isur Chelev. Is miut b'chelev u'miut b'dam mahu. Now the Gemara is really going out on a limb, and the Gemara is saying, well, we're going to build up and up and up, and now we have a different suffix. What about two different violations of two different Isurim? The lowest common denominator is that they're both Isur Karis. There's one Isur Karis for eating Chelev and another Isur Karis for eating Dam. The first minority group violated the Isur Chelev. The second minority group violated the Isur Dam. And clearly now we have, number one, we have two different Horos of Bezdin. There's one Horo vis-a-vis Chelev, another vis-a-vis Dam. Number two, we have two different Isurim. Is Hachavadai came the Trey Isur Ninhu the Kevan to Ein Isurim Shavalom Mitztarif. Certainly, the Isur Dam and the Isur Chelev are two distinct Isur, and therefore you cannot join together and integrate the first minority on the Dam, on the Chelev, and the second minority on the Dam. O Dilma, or should we say, no, maybe we should say, nevertheless, since they're all Kares, oh, Hachavadi came the Trey Isuri Ninu. Okay, it doesn't say it explicitly in the Lashon of the Gemara, but it means since they're both a Chiyuv Kares, that itself is a mitzarif. That could be combine them together. Rashi points out over here that there is a fundamental difference between dam and chelev, because the Isur of Achilas dam applies both to behemos and to chayos, whereas the Isur of chelev only applies to behemos and not to chayos. So the Gemara says, "V'tizbara." I mean, can you really make a valid comparison between these cases? Emer d'shamet leila Reb Shimon. When did Reb Shimon say that if you have a idea? I'm sorry. Oh, Dilma came in Disuram, the Karbonim Shavim, it's Tarif. What should we say that since they both generate a Chiyuv Kares, and in Shogeg, a Chiyuv Chatos, that's enough to be Mitzarif them. Fourth question. Bim Tim Salama came on the Karbonim Shavim, it's Tarif. Since they both, whether you ate chelev or you ate dam, you bring the same identical carbon, which is called a carbon chatos. That's enough for a reason to create an integration. Wait a minute. What happens if one minority violated Isur chelev, the other minority violated Isur avodah zarah? I mean, here you're talking about two different isurim and two different punishments, because the punishment for chelev is kares. The punishment for avodah zarah is a capital crime. Hachavadi ein isurim shavei karbonim shaveh. Now, if you violate avodah zarah b'shogeg, then you bring a different carbon. Yeah. Okay, it's a sa'ir for a chatos and a par for an ola. O dilma keva de idi ve'idi karesu mitztarif. Maybe it's enough that they're both, whether it's avodah zarah or it is chelev, they're both an isur kares, and therefore we combine them. Teku, the Gemara leaves us over. Iboilahu, another suffix. Horu bezdin she chelev mutter. This is unbelievable. You're going to have to say over and over again that when the Gemara uses the term chelev mutter, it means only one type of chelev. The asu miut hakol. Now I'm going to translate it as miut, meaning a minority of the community, relying on the erroneous ruling of the Bezdin, went ahead and ate that chelev, that type of chelev. However, before they brought their own personal chatos, and now the question is, what about par helam dav shel tzibur? Because meis also bezvi omer bezlach v'chosu v'hodu v'yasu mir acher. So now we have another minority that also was erroneously misled and ate chelev. The difference is that there were two different batei dinim who made the same mistake. There was one bezdin, and the minority followed that bezdin, and then that bezdin is gone, and now they appointed another bezdin that fell into the same trench, the same ditch, and again was matir b'tos, that same type of chilek. Can we combine the two minorities to make a majority if there were two different batei dinim? So now the question is whether or not the tziruf depends upon the nature of the isur or on the nature of the bezdin. The bezdin is an integral part, essential part of the mechayev. So the Gemara points out the following: I'll leave the man the Omer bezdin maisi lo tiboilech. There's a machlokes about who brings the soyer. I'm sorry, who brings the par helim dover shel tzibur? According to one group of Tanoim, it's a chovas bezdin. After all, they made the mistake; they have to bring the carbon. According to the other Mandi Omar, there's an element of guilt here in the kol, in the tzibur, and the tzibur has to bring the carbon. Again, it's the identical carbon, and it's only one carbon. But who is obligated to bring the carbon? Is it the bezdin or is it the tzibur? If we go according to Mandi Omer that bezdin shoulders the responsibility to bring the carbon helim dover shel tzibur, then in this case, the bezdin only caused the minority of people to eat the chelev, and therefore there's certainly no chiyuv. The fact that there was a different bezdin that's no longer around that generated the same isur chelev, that is irrelevant because we need one bezdin to generate the chiyuv of par helim dover shel tzibur. When do I have a suffix aliv the mandi omer tzibur maisi? The obligation to bring the par helim dover shel tzibur is incumbent upon the congregation, namely the people that violated the isur. What do we say about this? Shall we take the minority vis-a-vis the first bezdin and combine it with the minority vis-a-vis the second bezdin? Because ultimately, we're going to create a tzibur that's chayev to bring the carbon par helim dover shel tzibur. O Dilma, Yedia dahu bezdin the horu be'inan. The Gemara now offers a second side, a possibility of saying that you need a yedias bezdin, although the chiyuv of bringing the carbon, according to this one, is incumbent upon the tzibur, but nevertheless the mechayev is the yedias ha bezdin, meaning bezdin has to declare we made a mistake. Bezdin and only bezdin can make that determination that we were mistaken with our erroneous ruling. And here you don't have a bezdin that could admit its mistake and admit that it had caused the majority of the tzibur to violate that isur chelev. You can't do that in this case because each bezdin only caused a minority of the community to violate that isur. Teku, the Gemara says, let it stand.